This week in Idaho, the Bible is making a comeback in Idaho schools, and the Idaho Statesman is losing it because of that. The state board proposes the elimination of DEI initiatives. Idaho AG leads for student free speech at the Supreme Court, and LGBTQ plus youth group flyer ignites debate at the Nampa Library. That and so much more. This is the Yokel Idaho Midweek Report, where we give you a quick overview of the news in Idaho for the last week. Hey, glad to have you here with us this week. Got a wonderful set of stories to go over, and also Merry Christmas as we're getting into that season there. Starting with our first story, in a surprising turn of events, the lauded Idaho Statesman has deemed the Bible inappropriate for public schools, sparking controversy, as you can guess, with it being one of the oldest publications in the state. This stance comes amid the ongoing debate about book content in Idaho's educational institutions, especially after the House Bill 710 being passed. At this point, you've probably heard it ad nauseum and are almost sick of me saying the name of the bill, probably. But the whole controversy started with the Idaho Family Policy Center petitioning for the reintroduction of Bible reading in public schools, which ended up facing criticism from the Statesman editorial board, as you can guess. They argued against it being added back into schools. This position also contrasts a little bit humorously with the paper's previous defense of controversial books in libraries, particularly more pornographic ones when House Bill 710 was passed, but they want to exclude the Bible. It's a little funny there. Another point that critics point out, and it's a little ironic, is the Bible's historical significance in Western civilization, being one of the most cited documents for either England or the United States. The debate does highlight the complex issues surrounding book selection in educational settings and the evolving attitudes towards religious texts in public spaces, particularly evolving away from the Bible and more towards more secular or Islamic or different texts there. In conclusion, as the discussion continues, questions have arisen about the balance between religious freedom, educational content, and the role of traditional texts in modern classrooms, which we would argue that tradition is important and that we should have traditional texts in there so we don't lose our culture. And speaking of something that flies in the face of tradition, or maybe a much older tradition, the upcoming 2025 legislative session in Idaho is poised to be the most conservative in the state's history, with significant implications for diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI programs. We've talked about it a little bit in a couple past midweek reports, but it's getting a little bit more steam here. The Idaho State Board of Education is considering resolutions that would eliminate DEI offices and initiatives from public colleges and universities. The legislature's already been trying to do this, but they've been struggling to get colleges to agree and get on board. This move aligns with a broader national backlash, not just here in Idaho, against DEI programs. We've heard of it even back in Florida, and they're trying to do that. They're the main frontrunners, which you might be wondering where all this came from and stuff. And DEI programs really got their full steam after the George Floyd death in 2020. But also getting a little bit more context there, Josh Withrow, the executive director of the state board, emphasized that the goal is not to remove support for students, but to ensure equal access to all, mostly based on merit and not by race. The proposed resolution mandates that no central office or policy be dedicated to DEI, and that student success initiatives be inclusive of all students. Some more center to left leaning lawmakers have expressed concern that such measures could undermine necessary support for marginalized groups. But moving forward, the board's decision is expected to set a precedent for how Idaho handles DEI in its educational institutions moving forward, which will be very interesting to see. Next, and speaking of fighting, the Idaho Attorney General Rao Labrador, along with 17 other states, has filed a friend of the court brief with the U.S. Supreme Court to protect students' First Amendment rights. Hey, look, it dovetails nicely there if we're talking about rights and students. Specifically, the case, the LM versus Town of Middleborough, involves a Massachusetts middle school student who was banned for wearing a t-shirt stating, quote, "There are only two genders." I know, shocking thing to say. Even after censoring the two in that phrase, school officials still prohibited the shirt. Labrador argues that students retain their constitutional rights in school and that schools' actions amount to viewpoint discrimination, which might be awful to see how the court goes there. But specifically looking at the arguments that are going through with this case, the brief cites the 1969 Tinker case, which establishes that students may express their views without disrupting school operations or infringing on others' rights. Seems reasonable there. But moving forward, the coalition of states is urging the Supreme Court to hear the case after a lower court ruled in favor of the school, not the student. This does highlight the ongoing debate about free speech in educational settings, which it used to not be a big issue, but it's becoming more and more. Also, the concern about how the lower courts are ruling at times, and the balance between objective truth and school policies, which honestly, school policies should be objective because you should be educating the students about objective truth. And speaking of something that dances fast with objective truth, a flyer from an LGBTQ plus youth group called Clutch has sparked a controversy at the Nampa Public School. Specifically, a poster advertising weekly meetings for ages 14 to 20 drew backlash from organizers like the Idaho Mass Resistance and Idaho Liberty Dogs, as well as State Senator Brian Lenny, as you can guess. But looking a little bit more deeply into it, critics have raised concern about the adults interacting with minors about sexuality, an area you shouldn't be going, and called for the flyer's removal. The Liberty Director Claire Conley defended the flyer's presence, stating it complies with the library's community event posting policy. Might need to be reviewed there. Clutch Director Mindy Oldenkamp emphasized that the group offers a supportive environment, with vetted volunteers and activities like karaoke and board games. Why could you ever oppose that? But boiling that all and having to take away with it, the argument does highlight the tension between LGBTQ ideology in relation to age-appropriate interactions. While some view the group as a necessary safe space, others would question the mixing of minors and adults in discussions about sexual ideas, which ultimately should be with the parents, not with other strangers at a public school or even at the public library. Which, if you liked our first set of stories here and enjoyed the Midweek Report so far, do us a favor and hit the like button on YouTube, Rumble, or Twitter. It helps us reach folks who love Idaho just like you. And then talking about another controversy that's been going on and has no signs of stopping, Kroger has once again extended the expiration date for its offer to acquire Albertsons. Very big name here in the state if you just came here. They are moving it from the November 26th to December 3rd, 2024 deadline. This marks the 15th extension since the initial offer was made on August 15th, which we've had a lot of time, reflecting the ongoing uncertainty as legal battles continue to unfold, which are happening in other states, but particularly the biggest one is the Federal Trade Commission's case against the merger remains unresolved, with a decision pending from Judge Adrian Nelson after hearings concluded over 2 months ago. Additionally, state-level challenges in Colorado and Washington are still awaiting judges. Also, to add a cherry on top to all of this, the United Food and Commercial Workers Local 7 has filed a class action lawsuit in Colorado, representing about 18,000 grocery workers against both companies. The lawsuit alleges collusion during a 2022 labor strike based on an internal email suggesting Albertsons agreed not to hire King Soper's employees during the strike. Both Kroger and Albertson have denied these allegations, and the union is seeking compensation for lost wages and economic gains for affected workers. But for those of you that are just like, what on earth are we talking about? I haven't heard about this at all. The merger is valued at about $24.6 billion with a B, and has faced scrutiny over potential antitrust issues that could lead to higher grocery prices and reduced competition, mainly in the face of the fact that besides Walmart, they are the two other biggest grocery chains in the United States, and for them to merge, they wouldn't have a lot of competition up against them. But despite these mounting legal challenges, Kroger has remained committed to the acquisition, aiming to finalize the deal by the end of 2024. We'll see if that happens. Meanwhile, significant executive changes have occurred at Kroger since the merger was first put forward, with Chief Merchant Stuart W. Atkin recently departing for a CEO role at Circana. As stakeholders await multiple judicial outcomes, as we've talked about, the future of this major grocery merger faces increasing complex legal hurdles, especially in the face of them not having any big rivals, which some are saying will push the deal out into 2025. We would argue that is probably most likely. And speaking of produce, and one of Idaho's most well-known one, in a shocking development, 4 major frozen potato producers, including Idaho-based J.R. Simplot and Weston, are facing lawsuits alleging price fixing. That's not good at all. Looking at the lawsuit, which was filed by Redner's Market and consumer Alexander Govna, claims these companies control about 97% of the $68 billion North American market, which you can guess we love our french fries here in America. It just isn't the same without having them with a burger. Formed a potato cartel, end quote, to inflate prices since 2021. The lawsuit alleges the companies implemented lockstep price increases, resulting in a 47% price hike between 2022 and 2024, despite falling production costs, maybe in the face of COVID and stuff. There's a good chance companies were getting a little squirrely there when they didn't have any right to. The suit claims this violates the Sherman Act, a federal antitrust law. But wrapping this all together, J.R. Simplot spokesperson stated that, quote, they compete fairly and with integrity, end quote, while Weston did not comment. The lawsuit suggests the industry structure, including concentrated sellers and high entry barriers, facilitate collusion, possibly, and it'll be very interesting to see what the courts come out with that. In any case, it is also good to have accountability, and for as much as we dislike lawsuits, this may be a good thing to look into a little. And speaking of institutions, specifically college, Dr. Laura Barber has taken the helm at the College of Eastern Idaho's second president, bringing a mixed record of institutional growth and progressive educational approaches. To flesh that out a little bit, we got to look at the history and context. While CI has seen impressive expansion under her previous leadership as the Vice President of Academic Affairs, with enrollment growing a staggering 244% since 2017, her emphasis on, quote, opening doors for all, end quote, and a focus on non-traditional methods for teaching students has raised questions about the institution's direction with her being added. Barber's international experience in France and her doctorate in educational leadership from Arizona State University suggest a potential alignment with more progressive academic trends. France has that, and so does the college down there in Arizona. Her inaugural speech highlighted diversity initiatives and non-traditional educational paths, while notably absent were discussions about maintaining traditional academic standards or addressing concerns about ideological bias in higher education, specifically DEI, which we've talked about in this episode a bit, and the legislature's kind of aiming for. But moving forward, as CEI expands with the new future tech building and growing programs, questions remain about whether Barber's leadership will maintain or throw out Idaho's conservative values in higher education. And speaking of young people and being added to positions, Trevor Sparrow, former director of Idaho Youth Challenge Academy, has been appointed as Idaho's new health and social service omnibus man by Governor Brad Little. Now, after hearing that, you probably have 2 questions. The first being, what on earth is this position? And 2, who on earth is this person? We can answer the first here. This newly created position, established by Senate Bill 1380, would focus on 1, overseeing services provided to children in foster care, 2, give protective supervision, and 3, provide residential treatment facilities across the state. Now, I can answer that second question, which is, who is Sparrow? He brings a wealth of experience to the role, having led the Idaho YCA since 2017, and has helped over 2,200 at-risk youth earn their high school diplomas or GEDs. His background also includes working as a probation and parole officer, addiction counseling, and serving as the mayor of Price from 2016 to 2020, so he's no slouch when it comes to leading and helping with kids. In this new role, Sparrow will manage the independent office responsible for 1, reviewing complaints within the state for child welfare programs, 2, supporting foster and biological parents, and 3, analyze data to implement system improvements across the state. particularly for his part. And as you can guess, Governor Little has expressed confidence in Sparrow's leadership abilities and commitment to serving Idaho's most vulnerable children, which is his main job there. But tying it all together, Sparrow is a father of 6 and the former foster parent himself. He's expressed gratitude for the appointment and enthusiasm for the opportunity to be a voice for children in care and to contribute to the ongoing improvement in Idaho's foster care system, which any improvement there is better than none. Which, if you've liked the Midweek Report so far and these stories we have talked about, please don't hesitate to share it. Your shares can help us spread the word about our beautiful state. And after finishing up in the valley, we'll head a little bit further north. On November 23rd, Kootenai County legislators gathered for a pre-session town hall at the Altar Church in Coeur d'Alene. The main reason for this was to discuss an ambitious conservative agenda for the upcoming 2025 legislative session, which it's good to see that they're planning and coordinating there a little bit. Oftentimes it seems like in politics people just go for it. But specifically looking at the meeting and what all happened at it, approximately about 150 attendees heard from about 8 of 12 local lawmakers, including District 3 Senator Doug Okonovich, who emphasized that a conservative wave would follow his potential election as pro temp, which there's a bit of fighting going on for that. The key topics include repealing the grocery tax, which is a very big one this year, with Okonovich expressing optimism about this goal, giving Governor Little's past support. Legislatures also outlined 3 major priorities. Number 1, reclaiming individual rights. 2, empowering local economies and education. And 3, upholding traditional values, which is something that's been growing in movement here in Idaho to have those really safeguarded as our state's growing. Representative Heather Scott highlighted her plans for 48 bills and noted the improved organization of the Conservative caucus in the legislature. Particularly on that, legislators agreed that education funding is excessive and called for school choice legislation to really send that money elsewhere or just not have it at all. But the overall atmosphere in the room, according to reports, was charged with enthusiasm as they expressed confidence in advancing their agenda in a legislature now more conservative than ever. And speaking of elections, Ada County, Idaho is making waves in election transparency by publishing every voter's ballot online. Bear with us for a second, don't freak out. Spearheaded by the county clerk Treg Triple, the innovative Ballot Verifier system allows anyone to view and verify election results independently. Our Secretary of State, Phil McGrain, has praised the initiative as a passion project of his that has set a national standard for transparency because we can actually check the results that the state is giving. The Ballot Verifier, accessible on the Ada County Elections website, enables users to examine ballot images and compare them with scanner readings. This tool covers recent elections, including the 2024 presidential race, offering insights into the voting process, which is really good to have. Now, I can obviously see some people that might have some concerns with this, mainly the part of privacy because people are getting to see how others voted. Granted, that kind of is the same. You can do that already. They're already public, but that's its own thing. While uploading of all ballots from the November 2024 election may take some weeks, which we would argue already done, the system has already provided access to ballots dating back to 2020 if you want to go check that election because there was a bit of stuff there. As other Idaho counties express interest in adopting similar systems, McGrain acknowledges the time required for a widespread implementation because it's a little bit unique, emphasizing the novelty of this approach nationwide and hoping that it will spread to more states so there can be greater transparency and accountability. And speaking of the other big county in the state, Canyon County Commissioners have approved a 31-home subdivision south of Lake Lowe, despite the ongoing water concerns from neighbors. Yeah, water is a concern right now with how much we're pulling from it and growing. Specifically, the project, which rezones 78 acres from agricultural to rural residential, faces opposition due to fears of further depleting the local aquifer, because you got so many straws in that whole cup there and, you're pulling out of it. Also, because Newberry residents have reported about wells drying during the summer months. Developers did try to attempt to address these concerns by switching to community systems, so instead of every single one having a well, you have just one big one for all of them, which the commissioners viewed more favorably. Specifically on that, Commissioner Chairman Zach Brooks, who won his election last primary, stated that the community water system, subject to Idaho's Department of Water Resources approval, would better serve the area than individual wells. However, some neighbors remain skeptical, arguing that the impact on existing wells and the cumulative effect of multiple developments in the area, which it is not stopping over here, have not been adequately considered due to the aquifer. The decision highlights the ongoing tension between development, which is something that they're all wanting, and the water resource management in Canyon County and the overall health of the aquifer. And speaking of developments and an area we don't hear it as much, plans for the Red Ridge Village, a significant development project near McCall, Idaho, have been submitted by the DF Development, the largest private landowner in Valley County. Specifically, the project would include over 1,100 homes, a vineyard, and an amphitheater. All this would be on about 2,250 acres of pristine land along the western edge of Valley County. It is envisioned as a gateway to a 30,922 acres of natural terrain. The project aims to preserve the area's beauty while offering amenities like farm-to-table restaurants and a community hall, which I think is really cool. You see this back east where they try to put some of the services closer so you don't always have to drive to go get to them. The development will be phased over several years, with construction potentially starting in 2026 and completed by 2034. Bit of time there. The plan is under review by the Valley County's Planning and Zoning Commission, with a public hearing scheduled for December 12th, which if you want to get on board in that and let them know, mark that date on your calendar. But public comments are encouraged and can be submitted in advance or at the hearing, which we just talked about. This ambitious project promises to blend residential living with national conservation efforts, though it has raised some questions like anything about environmental impact and infrastructure demands, while some are also very excited to see more homes being developed because the whole Valley County is struggling with houses at the moment. Which, if you've liked the stories you've heard so far and don't want to miss any future updates on them, please make sure to subscribe and follow us so you don't miss any of our future content. And speaking of homes and something we all pray never happens to us, in a secluded town, Placerville, you may have heard of it in Idaho, nestled in the Boise National Forest, residents are grappling with a little bit of a harsh reality, losing their home insurance due to wildfire risk. This has escalated with the wildfires that we've had in the state, specifically on the Sawtooth and other areas, and we're not the only state to be dealing with it, but specifically looking at the Placerville situation, Stephen Copes, a local resident, expressed this firsthand when his insurer dropped him without notice because his home is in a high-risk area. Despite having no claims, Copes found himself searching for new coverage at higher cost. The reason for this? Placerville's remote location and its level 8 fire risk, which is done by the Idaho Insurance Rating Bureau, exacerbates the challenge of securing affordable insurance. The fire chief over there, Andrew Borrett, highlighted efforts to improve this rating by 1, increasing water supplies, and 2, creating defensible spaces around homes. From 2021 to 2024, 6% of U.S. homeowners in wildfire-prone areas lost their insurance. Specifically for insurance companies, they're getting a little squeezed tightly, reflecting on a national trend there, so it's not just here in Idaho. But as wildfires have threatened the region, Placerville residents like Copes have taken measures to protect their homes and maintain insurance coverage, hopefully, underscoring the importance of preparedness and also a lot of the economic things that are happening in the United States right now. And speaking of something you might be able to do while you're there living in Placerville or any of our different areas here in Idaho, in 2017, Idaho became home to the first dark sky reserve in the United States. This reserve spans 906 acres within the Sawtooth National Recreational Area. Now, you might be wondering, what is a dark sky designation? Why on earth do we have this? This designation, granted by the International Dark Sky Association, aims to preserve the natural nighttime environment and reduce light pollution, which is something that's only getting more prevalent with more lights and them being so cheap and LEDs being so bright. Anyway, the reserve encompasses Stanley, Ketchum, and Sun Valley, offering visitors a rare opportunity to witness the Milky Way and the planets with the naked eye, which, as long as you don't freeze, because that particular area also is the coldest part of the state, but that's a different thing. The creation of this reserve is the result of nearly 2 decades of collaborative efforts between local leaders, businesses, and land managers. It serves multiple purposes, even beyond just the light element, and including ecosystem conservation, wildlife protection, and enhanced educational opportunities through astronomy, because you can actually go out, you don't have to have special equipment or whatever else. And because it's not too far to go to Stanley, I think it's 2 hours or something from Boise. But in any case, the Idaho Dark Sky Alliance, established in 2020, coordinates operations and fundraising for the reserve. So if you want to fund them or support what they're doing there, you now know who that is. This initiative is particularly significant, given that over 80% of Americans live in light-polluted urban areas, making such pristine night skies increasingly rare here in the United States. The Central Idaho Dark Sky Reserve stands as an example that should encourage us about the maintenance of our night skies here in Idaho. And coming to our second to last one, and speaking of lights, but in a very good way, the 2024 State House Christmas tree has officially arrived in downtown Boise. The tree, which is a 36-foot blue spruce, approximately 25 years old because they take a bit, and weighing about 3,750 pounds, was carefully cut and transported from the Len B. Jordan building on Monday, November 25th, in the morning. That way you didn't have to deal with traffic, hopefully. I feel bad for any of you that were trying to go through downtown Boise when they were moving that thing. To move the tree, it took multiple state agencies, including the Department of Lands, Idaho Transportation Department, and the Boise Police Department, to collaborate to place the tree in its traditional spot. It was anchored into a specially prepared 10-foot deep hole and secured by state crews. The blue spruce, which was selected for its conical shape and straight trunk, will be the centerpiece of the holiday decoration. For his part, Governor Brad Little and First Lady Teresa Little hosted the annual tree lighting ceremony on December 3rd after dark, while the tree was adorned with lights and topped with a star. Staying with the theme of trees, and also speaking of the star, Zane Everman, a Boise craftsman, has launched an innovative venture to save trees from the landfill and transfer them into valuable lumber. His company, Les Boise Milling, is Boise's first large-scale urban sawmill, which you might be wondering, what on earth is that? What they do is rescue local trees that would otherwise be discarded and thrown in a landfill because, they're dead or dying or whatever else. Specifically, Everman's mission began 6 months ago when he started leasing space in Boise to work on saved trees. He's collaborated with local cities, the Boise State University, Ada County Highway District, and St. Luke's to identify trees slated for removal. Using a massive bandsaw to do with some of these trees, Everman cuts the trees into slabs, which are then dried in an industrial kiln for about 2 months. This process, which would take a year if done naturally, prepares the wood for use by local craftsmen and homeowners. But overall, since March, Everman has saved about 50 trees from the landfill, including silver maples, elms, ash, and sequoias. I didn't even know we had sequoias here. I know we have the maples. The elms I know about. The ashes are the ashes, but that's very interesting. If you don't know what a sequoia is, go look it up. He aims to rescue about 100 trees in the coming month for Christmas. Everman's work not only reduces waste, but also preserves local history, because there's a lot you can learn from trees. He's encouraging people to create unique, meaningful pieces from these rescue trees, offering an alternative to mass-produced furniture. And speaking of something that is not mass-produced, that is this episode, and because of that, I have to go. So thank you for listening to the entire report. I sincerely hope you found it enjoyable and valuable. If you like the Midweek Report, make sure to check out our other content. Also, if we missed any important points or provided incorrect information, or if there's other ways we can improve the Midweek Report, please feel free to reach out to us via email or on Twitter by tweeting us at LocalYokelIdaho, or you could just comment down below. With the small team we have, we're not able to cover everything, but we do our best to cover the most important and interesting stories. Thank you for your continued support and assistance. That's all for now. I wish you a fantastic rest of your week. Merry Christmas and Godspeed.